its oldest citizen last week when Freda Betsy Gillis of St. Fintan's originally passed away at the age of 108. Her daughter Vera Bruce and her granddaughter Peggy Bruce are on the line now from Stephenville. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Vera, tell me a bit about your mom. What was she like?
Well, she was amazing. She was. She had great strength and courage and love for everyone. She was a very selfless woman. Everything was done for somebody else all the time, for her children and for her husband and for the community and for everyone. She was, as I say, she was interested in everybody.
I saw in the obituary that she took part in some of the early days of the cooperative movement on the West Coast. What can you tell me about that?
Well, yes, in the community of the Highlands, it was I think it was a cooperative buying club, and and then it later became a co-op store, a small one, and I think they did have some kind of a cooperative business with eggs, as far as I can remember. Yeah.
Their life changed, though, in the 1950s when your dad, Tommy Gillis, gets a job with Bowaters. What happened then?
Well, yes, he became a woods contractor with Bowaters, and they were very busy. They had a camp up Riverbrook siding, and of course they were logging for the paper mill in Cornerbrook, and they had the trains came along, and they had to prepare all the logs for the flat cars and the trains, which came at all hours of the night. And they were very busy. And Mom did the book work, because he employed several men there, and so they were quite. And he had the equipment to care for, and they were quite busy.
So after your father stops working, after he passes away, your mother doesn't have any of that work to do anymore. I guess then she just puts her feet up, does she?
Oh no, that isn't Mom. No, she never did put her feet up. No, she kept working, and she was always busy. And she traveled too. She traveled to. Her people had come from England. And she had traveled with her daughter-in-law to visit relatives in England, and they had also visited the United States, and she visited Calgary several times, where Peggy lives. I visited there with her one time, and she was quite active and interested in all her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren.
Peggy, let me bring you into the conversation now. How would you describe your grandmother?
Everything Mom said. She and if funnily enough, it's in seeing the great-grandchildren and what an icon she's become for them that it gives a perspective. But she was my grandmother. She was my friend, is how I saw my grandmother. And her door was always open. She took in additional children when they needed care, family members, when their mom wasn't well. She took in whole families when their house burnt down. Her door was literally always opened. And her tongue could be as sharp as her mind was. When Mom was describing how selfless she was, which is true, I had a vision of my grandfather grinning because she could also have a really sharp tongue as well. She wasn't a quiet, gentle. She could be as tough as nails as she needed to be, and I loved her. She could cause men to quake in their boots if need be, but she didn't. And she was very British, and she was very. You didn't see her. My grandmother's back was as straight. At 99, she went down the stairs at my daughter's high school graduation, and I was looking at her shoulders as she held my husband's arms going down the stairs, and they were straighter than the young girls wearing their gowns that were 18 years old. she was an incredible woman.
I understand, as sharp as her tongue was, she had a beautiful singing voice. And you have an old cassette tape there with some of her singing on it?
I have bits and snippets, that I've kept over time. One moment here now. Here's one of them, if you'd like to hear it.
I would. Beautiful.
It is. Nan was about 90, I guess, when she recorded that. So the earliest memories I have of singing with my grandparents is the trips they would take to Corner Brook to pick up parts for their equipment. And you just sang for miles. You sang there, they sang back, they sang in the house. That's what they did. And right up until the last year, if you go somewhere with Nan in the car, we'd sing.
To what, if anything, did she attribute her longevity? Making it to 108 is a rare feat, even today.
I was speaking about with this to Mom yesterday. We visited Nat in the hospital, and Nan was there to see a doctor, and the doctor had said to her, Mrs. Gillis, now, what did you do? Because her memory was incredible, her strength, everything. And she looked at him, she said, well, doctor, to tell you the truth, it would be easier for me to tell you what I didn't do than what I did do, because she'd done everything. You know, she had from farming in a very non-technological world where she was born into. When she was born, women couldn't even vote. She was, flying back and forth. She was stuck in Heathrow Airport for 3 days when they had a bomb scare. She's been on the ferry when you couldn't get a cup of tea because the waves were slapping so high in a hurricane. She was in the train track at Black Bay when the train went off the track, and she had a couple of rabbits to bring to her cousin in Stephenville Crossing. She was in a terrible accident when she was in her 60s and was thrown out the back of the window of a pickup truck when it rolled.
Dear Lord.
So her those shoulders that she carried so straight were broken, actually. The scapula on the back of her shoulders and the ligaments were torn there, and her knees were broken.
Well, I know how she made it to 108. She was almost indestructible.
Yeah, she's part cat. She definitely had 9 lives.
I heard she was fond of the odd feet of Mary Brown's, too. I was wondering if that might be the key to longevity.
Yeah, so much for junk food killing you. She did, and that was such a treat for her because, again, the trips to Corner Brook. And in those days, the early days with Mary Brown's, you didn't go into the building. It was a takeout. And they would make the thermos of tea. And I've been with them on those trips. They'd have the thermos of tea, and Granddad would do his business at Bowaters, and they would have their Mary Browns in the truck with their tea. That would be their dinner, and it would be a treat. It would be, that was a huge treat. You didn't get takeout in St. Vittens or in any of the woods camps up around there. So yeah.
Peggy, would your grandmother want you to be sad today?
Oh goodness, no. She knew that she wouldn't be here forever. She always said, when he calls, I will answer. And she would want people to get on, and she would want them to remember she said to me one time the church had gone, and she said when the church goes, it's the community that goes. So the ability of people to communicate with each other. And in our age of communication, we often do that less and less to actually reach out. So I think she would like her story shared about hers and Granddad's place in the community that they lived in. Her quick wit, the work they did. They had 75 men on the payroll at one time. They gave back in so many ways to their family and the community they lived in. And I think that's what she would like to be remembered for. You can't be sad when you have somebody far longer than you ever expect to have that kind of a gift. And I'll let Mom finish, actually. I tend to get winded, so I'll stop now and keep on the phone.
I remember her when my father passed away, and I remember her taking his suit jacket down, and she held it to her face and cried for a few minutes because we were on our way to the funeral home with it. And then she stood straight and she said, "But you must do what has to be done." So that is her attitude. You have to have strength and do what has to be done, And again, she was thinking of him. She was doing what had to be done for him. She was doing what had to be done for everybody else at the time. She was forgetting about her own tears.
Well, I want to thank both of you for taking a couple of minutes today to tell us about Freda.
Oh, my pleasure. You have a good day.
Very welcome. It was a pleasure.
And that is Vera and Peggy Bruce, daughter and granddaughter of Freda Betsy Gillis of St. Fintons, who passed away at 108 years old. A memorial service will be scheduled for a later date. Now I wonder, who's the oldest person in Newfoundland and Labrador? Do you know? Are you them? Call Talkback. Let me know.